Dave, welcome. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yes, as you mentioned, I'm the director of Ashmere Derbyshire, third generation, started by my grandfather, and my father, and I've been full time in the business since 2002. But obviously prior to that, growing up, school holidays, every opportunity where I could be put to use was in and around the home. So I am fortunate enough to have many members of the team who still remember me as a child. So that's always positive. And every now and again, the odd photo comes out just to remind me of my roots.
Fabulous, fabulous, great. We were talking at the top of this episode, somewhat, it's unique, think situation is you have these seven homes all within Derbyshire, and like everyone knows you. Perhaps more so than other owners and directors, your kind of, reputation is, very much on the line. And we know, running a care homes, there's always things that can happen. You never know what's going to happen the next day. But tell me about your journey and what maybe if that question of like what particular challenges you feel you've had to face and overcome, having this, seven homes in one county.
Yeah, well, quite a few. I mean, thinking back to when I first started, I remember we had two computers and one printer, and that was that. Everything was paper-based. It seems crazy now to go back to those days when there were more filing cabinets of paper than there were people. I mean, I think, as I mentioned, the locality thing has always that's been a deliberate thing on our part because we've always been hands-on. As I said, obviously, for me as a child involved in the homes. And obviously then the company was a lot smaller. So, we had to be more hands-on. And then as we've grown, I've always felt it was important that any service that we were operating was within a reasonable travel distance. If a home's an hour away, it's easy for me to just jump in the car, go down, have a chat with the manager, see what's going on,
Mm,
be present within the home. And exactly the same for the rest of the management team. If the home was 200 miles away, well, that's an overnight stay, that's a trip.
yeah.
And it becomes a lot harder to manage. And our management style within the company as a whole is always very hands-on. It's normal
Mm,
for operations manager, training manager, people to actually be in the care homes, interacting with the management team, interacting with the residents and the staff. Just because I feel that's really important to be able to, know and understand what's going on
mm,
in those
mm,
homes and maintain that quality. And
yeah.
and as you said at the beginning, obviously with being in one location, and I must say I'm the third generation, so I still have my parents to answer to. They're both still around. If something goes wrong, everybody knows who I am, where I am, and worst of all, I'll get a phone call off my dad telling me, I dropped the ball on my watch. So there's a great incentive to make sure that you do the best you can. And I've always been a believer that if you concentrate on the quality of service,
Mm,
that will, the longevity, the customer base, and your reputation will
mm,
carry you through.
mm,
Um, and I think, obviously, always operating within Derbyshire or within that sort of 1 hour commute of our offices helps focus that mind greatly. Um,
mm, mm.
because obviously, like I say, that there's nowhere to hide. Everybody knows who you are, what you do, and we employ around 400 staff. So
Mm.
you just can't go to Sainsbury's without bumping into somebody that knows
Yeah,
me.
I can
Um,
imagine. Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, and if somebody's not happy, they're always quick to come forward and point that out.
I know,
So
that's good. So that's that's being approachable, I guess, is a key thing here as well, especially when you're you're being seen. every time pretty much I guess you step out the door. But in terms of the focusing on quality then, so you now you mentioned obviously you have had you've grown over the years. And perhaps the challenges of, ensuring good quality has maybe changed as you've grown. Going to visit one home regularly is different to visiting seven homes regularly. So I'm curious to know how your attitude and approach to ensuring quality, to what extent, you take on responsibility yourself, to what extent you delegate it out to, complete trust and reliance on your managers, and the kind of systems you may have in place to just, make sure that everything's ticks along in the right way.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a obviously it's a huge living beast, if you like, that's
Mm,
constantly changing. And I mean, yeah,
mm,
certainly the care industry from when I joined over 20 years ago to now is unrecognizable.
yeah,
I mean, I think there's been some real big milestones for us along the way. The first one that springs to mind is we went through a process with the Investors in People organisation and brought them in to
right.
sort of to interview our staff and to give us honest feedback on how they felt empowered within the organisation and the inputs that they
Mm,
had. And that gave us I mean, in all honesty, at the time, we thought we were doing a lot better than we were. And some of the feedback was quite difficult to hear. But obviously, having then taken that on board and
mm,
acted on it and improved communication with all of our staff, and we've introduced apps and things like that to allow the free flow of information direct from, myself and everybody else within the sort of the senior management team throughout the entire organization. That's been vital, and especially through COVID when things were changing on a day by day basis. And, everybody was sort of watching the TV to find out what was going to be doing next, the
mm,
next day. We could easily sort of share that information. So that was incredibly vital for us. And, we've learned over time to sort of introduce an ethos of we constantly want to change. We're constantly looking for innovation. And I our induction process for anybody new that comes to us, they spend a week with our in-house training manager. So we deliver all of our training face to face because we found that people that work within the social care sector interact far better with people than they do with computers.
mm,
So, online training, video training, that sort of thing, just it ticked a box, but it didn't really scratch the itch, if you know what I mean. It didn't
yeah,
get to what we needed. So we have our own training manager. We write and develop all our own training courses in-house, and we deliver them face to face. So anybody coming to us, regardless of their experience or the job role that they're going into, they'll have a week with our training manager in a classroom setting, a group setting.
right.
Um, and I will sit down. I spend half a day with all the new staff to introduce myself and
Mm,
who we are as a company and make
mm,
sure that they understand that the things that we say and do are not a tick box exercise. They're not a poster on the wall to look good. It's something that we genuinely believe in. And obviously, if we don't live up to our own standards, then they can come directly to me. They don't have to go through a process if they don't want to. I want to know about it.
mm,
So, try to sort of make sure that they understand that I'm a real person and the fact that they're valued because obviously without them, we have no service.
yes,
So we sort of started there, and then it's instilling the ethos of if something goes wrong, it's not a blame game. It's not it's the end of the world. It's just how can we learn from this? What can we do differently? We've changed so many little tweaks here and there as to even just how we do the induction process by getting that feedback. So now, off the back of the induction process, a month later, so once somebody's had the induction, they've had 2 weeks supernumerary, and then they've been working within their home,
mm,
we bring them back and we have a coffee and cake and a sit down and say, what works? What doesn't
mm,
work? What could we
mm,
improve on?
mm,
Did we live up to your expectations? And from those little nuggets are fantastic to be able to just tweak things and change things and make sure that, we are actually delivering what we say we want to deliver
right.
and empowering the staff to say, oh, actually, if I raise an issue or if I've got a suggestion,
Mm,
it's going to be listened to.
mm,
It's not a company that sort of goes, no, 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 I don't want to hear what's wrong. It's
mm,
the exact opposite. Tell us what's wrong. Tell us what we can improve on. because we don't want to do, next year what we've been doing this year. We're
Mm.
always looking for ways to improve and change. And I think that's
Mm.
probably been the secret to our success of being able to operate in a relatively small geographical area for such a long time. We're sort of coming up to 40 years now, operating in the same area. And yeah, you don't get to do that by accident, really.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting on that this induction, and then as you say, the coffee and cake. So because I guess you can see the value of listening to the people who are new and what they've learned and how they see you, and that important element of listening and valuing what they have to say, because they're on the floor delivering the care, and I can see
Yeah.
how that important that is. I'm curious to know, for those providers who've not gone through the Investors in People, would you recommend it? You mentioned you were, well, that's my first question, and you also mentioned there were things that you were, and I guess this applies to all of us. We think we're doing something well, but in fact, we're not. And it's actually probably really good when I hear that you had a third party who come in and say, well, actual fact, you're not doing this particularly well. Here's how you can improve. So tell me about that, whether, to what extent you would recommend it, or and what, maybe you can share some of the things that you particularly learned.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything, you get out of it what as much as you want, really. I think, yeah, for us, it's a great opportunity. It's a third party coming in, so staff. Although we do regular questionnaires, and
Mm,
they are anonymous, and we invite staff to give us that constructive feedback, as well as obviously residents and their families. With that being purely staff focused and a third party entity, I think sometimes staff feel a little bit more, freedom of speech, if you
freedom,
like.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, to begin with, it was quite a painful process because we thought we were doing a really good job, and it was, yeah, we do all these fantastic things, and
Mm,
then the feedback was, well, actually, some staff don't feel listened to, and I think that sort of highlighted to us the importance of good communication because, we
right.
would have managers meetings and disseminate information through to the management team of the home. And then they would take that, and it was like a game of Chinese whispers. So that by the time that got to, the domestic team or the kitchen staff, it was a version of what we'd set out and lacking the explanation or the detail
Mm,
as to why we were doing it a
mm,
different way. So I think that was where a lot of staff felt maybe a little bit undervalued, or they weren't included in the decision-making process because they weren't necessarily the story was being diluted. So
interesting.
yeah, and I think the other good thing is again with it being obviously you're paying for the service, but a
Mm,
third party is there's those check-ins. So a
mm,
year down the line, 2 years down the line, have you achieved those things that you set out
mm.
to do, and how far are you towards setting new goals? What are they going to be? How are you going to get there? So, because again, it's very easy to get sort of distracted with the day to day, just getting by, dealing with the problems. What's happening this week? What's admissions have we got coming in? What all that sort of stuff, and it's easy to sort of take your eye off the ball and think, oh, I'll get around to that next week. And it keeps dropping to the
Yeah,
bottom of the list,
yeah.
and then suddenly it's like, actually, we haven't set that up, or we haven't
Mm,
introduced these workshops, or
mm,
we haven't appointed champions for X, Y, and Z.
mm.
So yeah, having that sort of that constant person in the background saying, don't forget 6 months' time we're going to have a meeting about this, and we need to see the
Yeah,
evidence of the things that you've done. Just helps keep you honest, I suppose,
yeah.
and
And some of
keep
those
it in
things
focus.
yeah, I see. Some of the things you talked about, sort of workshops and champions, was this kind of things you implemented to endeavor to, make sure the message wasn't diluted, and that you had more direct feedback from certain, roles within the group.
Yeah, definitely, and as well, that's where a lot of the really good ideas come from. Is
Mm,
the staff,
mm.
the people that are sort of delivering the services that our residents are receiving day in, day out.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, really being led by them as to what they see
Mm,
as areas that we can improve on. What, where do they think, we can make changes that are going to benefit the residents, and also sharing best practice. So,
mm,
it's there's no such thing as a new problem. Everything we've
mm.
probably tackled it,
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least twice in the last 40 years. So it's really good to get that feedback from staff to
yeah.
say, if somebody's saying, well, has anybody had this problem before? Yeah. And this is what we did, and we can share those, or even just actually we had a problem, we came up with this solution, and it's been fantastic, and there's
Mm,
been X, Y, and Z benefits from it.
mm, mm,
Um,
mm,
so yeah, and as a company, we're open to the idea of learning and
mm,
change,
mm,
and that's something that again, back in the beginning when we started, especially with the investors and people around about that sort of time, change was quite difficult.
mm.
We had a lot of, well, we've always done it this way, and and we knew we wanted to make the improvements, and we wanted to sort of bring ourselves forward and chase the sort of, the higher levels of service. Um, and it was how to get there, how to sort of slowly bring around that acceptance of change and that willingness to change within
Yeah, I see.
workforce. And because obviously having staff who have been with you an incredibly long time, and again many generations,
Mm,
it's not
mm,
unusual to have, it's almost mostly female, but mothers and daughters and even grandparents that are in our who are receiving our care as well. Um, but then you've got somebody who's been with you for 20,
mm.
30 years, and when you say, actually, we're going to do this differently now, that can produce a lot of resistance. Well, it's been
Yeah,
on for
sure.
if it wasn't broken, why fix it?
Yeah, yeah.
But over the years, we've gradually sort of instilled that attitude. I remember many years ago when we introduced electronic care plans, which have been a fantastic revelation, bringing care documentation out of the locked filing cabinet that nobody,
Mm,
apart from the senior ever went in, through to putting it in the hands of every member of
yeah,
staff.
yeah.
But I remember at the time staff saying, "Well, I can't do this. There's no way I'm going to have to leave. I've never used a mobile phone, and I've not done this, and I've not done that." We didn't have any of those problems. We took it
Mm,
slowly. We supported everybody that needed the support, and we made sure that we didn't go at anything gung ho. And then once we had that proof of concept, we could bring our other staff into the homes that were already running it and say, look,
ah,
this is where we're going to get to. This is what it's going to look
I
like. Here's
see.
the
Yeah.
feedback from the people that have already done
Mm,
it,
mm,
and then roll it out across all the homes.
mm, mm.
And I think as well, once people get used to things changing and all of the time and always looking for new ideas, then they just start to accept it.
Yeah,
It's just part and parcel of working at Ashmere is
yeah.
they're going to want to change something, they're going to want to try something new, and I can be part of that, or I will go along with it, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, so it's kind of been very much ingrained into just how you do things, and it's to be expected, and come along on the journey with us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
fabulous, great. Just very quickly, Dave, you mentioned the care management solutions, the digital ones, moving away from the paper. Is there any, obviously we live digital and, even AI is coming on board. Is there any kind of like technology innovations that you feel have made a difference for you?
We do like technology. So part of our program of works, again, trying new things, looking for new ideas as we have been refurbished. So we've got a mixture of older conversion type
Right.
buildings,
Okay.
first what we would call sort of first generation
Yeah.
purpose built, right the way through to the home that I'm currently sat in. We
Mm,
opened at the end of 2019, just in time for COVID.
right.
So
Yeah.
fantastic timing that
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
But what as we renovate our buildings, we have our own maintenance team with constant program of renovations. It's like painting the fourth road bridge. By the time you've got to the end, it's time to go back to
Got
the
it.
beginning again.
Got it. Yeah.
We always try new things. So we've
Yeah.
tried things like circadian lighting.
Right.
So
Okay.
this building again, we trialed it in smaller sections of existing
Mm, mm,
existing homes. Here we have a full circadian lighting system, so our lighting will automatically change
Ah,
temperature and
yeah.
brightness throughout the day to mimic British summertime. So that really helps people who are living with dementia to be able to orientate day to night. And obviously anybody else, especially, it's February, it's
Yeah.
gloomy, it's raining
Yeah.
outside, it's cold, nobody wants to go out. So it helps orientate our residents through to, is it morning or afternoon or evening, and improve sleep.
Mm.
So we've done that. We've done acoustic monitoring's been a really good one that
Right.
we've trialed in this home as well,
Mm.
where so instead of night checks, obviously with people's consent, the system is computerized, monitors for noises. And if it identifies something that it thinks is worth investigating, it will bring it to the attention of the staff, who can then actually listen to the recording themselves and then make a decision as to whether or not they're going to go into that bedroom and potentially disturb that resident in their sleep.
Mm. Mm.
And that way we've avoided having too many staff wandering around the building at night, because obviously doors opening and shutting and corridor doors and lifts, they're all things that can disturb people's sleep, which is really important.
Mm.
Having the energy and enthusiasm to be involved in the activities through the day only comes from having a really good night's sleep.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's
and I
great.
mean AI is an interesting one.
Mm.
Uh, it's difficult because obviously a lot of companies seem to put AI on things as a sales sticker
Yeah.
to just say it's AI, whether it is or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how that impacts on sort of risk management and that
Mm.
side of things. I
Mm.
think will be
Mm.
really,
Mm.
really interesting.
Yeah, no, of course, it's all on the horizon. Well, that's fascinating. I mean, there's a lot here for everyone to take on board, and the style of running the organization, the ethos, the vision, technology. So, thank you for sharing this, Dave, and thank you very much for being on the Care SEO Success Stories podcast.
Thank you for having me.